So the other day, I was making a collage of Chad Kroeger's face on an online off-brand version of Photoshop because I'm way too cheap to buy the real thing, when I got wondering about Nickelback. You know, despite Nickelback being a hugely successful band, I don't actually know all that much about them, and I thought that just isn't right. So I started to do a bit of research and I found something that has been left unexplained. One of the original band members, Brandon Kroeger, left to become an accountant. Now that doesn't make any sense to me. Why would someone leave a popular rock band to become an accountant? I have a few theories, but first, I'll give you some insight into the history and members of Nickelback, because I don't think anyone has actually thought about them in the past 15 years, and you need to know a bit about them before I can go into the theories. So Nickelback was formed in 1995 by Chad and Mike Kroeger, their cousin Brandon, and their friend Ryan Peake. Chad Kroeger, born in Hanna, Alberta, is the lead singer and guitarist. Some of his most notable achievements are marrying and subsequently divorcing Avril Lavigne, founding a record label, 604 Records. Something I found interesting about this is that the area code for Vancouver, where the label is based, is 604, and so the guy might be a lyrical genius, but he definitely lacks creativity in all other things apparently. And, of course, being incredibly good looking. Next we have Mike Kroeger, also born in Hanna, Alberta, and he's the bassist. Some of his more notable achievements are being a member of Nickelback and getting out of Alberta before it is too late. He also named one of his kids after a board game that I always go into feeling optimistic, but then slowly remember that the whole point of the game is to lie and be lied to, and then I'm sitting in one of my friend's basements resenting everyone and everything that ever made this game possible because I'm instinctually trusting of everyone, and so I end up trusting the wrong people and lose the game, and then my friends get all frustrated at me because obviously the people are going to lie. But guys, I'm struggling here. I don't know who to trust. My whole world is crumbling before me. Ryan Peake is the rhythm guitarist, keyboardist, songwriter, and backing vocalist for Nickelback. He's also been known to cook, do the other members' taxes, sew the costumes for stage, as well as carry the entire band on his back because Chad and Mike do nothing compared to this legend. So all three of the members introduced so far have stayed in the band since its creation. And then we get to Brandon. The mysterious Brandon. Cousin of Mike and Chad, Brandon was the founding drummer of Nickelback, featuring in their first album, Curb. Brandon was the first, but he definitely wasn't the last. He left the band in 1997 after only a year and a half of being in the band. After Brandon, we have Mitch Gwindon, who was in the band for about 2 years and who is now, according to his Instagram, a cat owner and mechanic. Next up is Ryan Vikdahl, who was a part of the band from '98 and up until 2005 when he was sued and forced out of the band for unknown reason. He also had to relinquish most of his royalties for the albums he was a part of. The most interesting thing I've managed to find about him on the internet is that he's in a relationship with a geisha. So that's funky. After Ryan, we have the current drummer of the band, Daniel Adair. I'm honestly shocked that this guy's managed to last more than 2 years in the band, given the track record Nickelback has worked up to this point. Look at this graph. Ryan joined Nickelback in 2005 and got his private pilot's license and probably uses it to fly around between bands, as it seems that he is a member of at least 3 or 4 at the moment. Okay, so now that you have a little bit of insight into the makeup and history of the band's members, we can get into the real meat of the video. So as I said, Brandon Kroeger left the band for no good reason apparently and became an accountant. Now that just doesn't make any sense to me, and so I've developed 3 different theories as to what actually happened to make him leave the band. So here they are. So as we know, Brandon is Mike and Chad's cousin. So what I'm thinking is that Brandon was pressured into joining the band and didn't actually want to be in it in the first place. Picture this. Mike and Chad are sitting in their garage one day, dreaming of starting a band, but they have a problem. Neither of them know drums, and drums are a very important part of rock. So what do? They find their cousin who plays the drums and are like, "Man, we need you so that we can start a band." And Brandon is like, "Nah, I'm good. I'm actually working my way towards becoming an accountant. And Mike and Chad aren't having it. So they go, if you don't join the band, we'll tell your dad that you went to a party last Friday and stayed out past curfew. And Brandon can't have his dad know that, or else he'd lose all of his dad's money that's getting him through his accounting program. Like, he does the math in his head and comes to the conclusion that joining the band is better than having to drop out of school. So he joins the band, and after about a year and a half or so in the band, they start gaining popularity. But he's had to put accounting on the back burner because all of his time is now dedicated to the band. And at this point, he needs to get out. He hasn't looked at spreadsheets in months. Sure, his bank account is looking good, but his heart account is in the red. He's got a bit of extra cash at this point, so he doesn't have to worry about his dad pulling funds and not being able to finish school. So he quits the band, he finishes his degree, and he is finally able to live the life he was meant to. Okay, that's theory number 1. Probably not very likely, but a theory nonetheless. Theory number 2 is that Chad hates drummers. He gets that being in a rock band, he's gonna need one, so he gets his cousin to join the band. He thinks, maybe if it's my cousin, I'm not gonna hate having a drummer as much, but after a year and a half, he still finds himself resenting having to share the stage with a drummer, cousin or not, so he kicks Brandon out of the band. But now he's in a rock band without a drummer. What a silly thing to be in. He realizes the error of his ways, but it's too late to get Brandon back in the band. He burnt that bridge, no recovery possible. So he talks to Mike and Ryan, and they're like, oh, we know this dude Mitch. And Chad's like, perfect, call him up. So they get Mitch in the band, but he won't stop talking about how much he likes cars, and Chad starts getting annoyed again. One day between shows, Mitch comes up to Chad and is like, oh hey Chad, have you heard about that new car that came out? Looks pretty cool to me, ah ha 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 ha. And Chad is fed up once again. He has had enough. This punk thinks it's okay to like drums and cars? 2 wrongs do not make a right, mister. So Mitch is out of the band, and they're once again out of a drummer. Chad doesn't want a drummer. He's done. He's like, we can just use an electronic drum backing track, he says to Mike and Ryan. But Mike and Ryan know better. They wouldn't be respected anymore if they just played an electronic backing track instead of having the real thing. So they tell this to Chad. They go, hey Chad, we wouldn't be respected anymore if we played an electronic drums backing track instead of the real thing. And Chad gets it. I mean, he gets it. He's just not super stoked about having to be near another drummer. But Mike and Ryan assure him that the next guy would be different. They would find the best drummer possible. So they bring in this guy Daniel, and Chad doesn't know what the others see in him, but the band does need a drummer, so he lets him stay. And as the years go on, Chad starts to actually like the guy. He gets a smile every time Daniel walks in the room, and they're becoming best friends. And then one day, they're more than friends. They start a secret relationship. They can't let the world know that they're lovers. What would the world say? Chad starts getting paranoid. People are gonna find out that he's in a secret gay relationship and that he actually tolerates a drummer. He won't have it, so he gets his PR team to set up a fake relationship for him. Avril Lavigne is called to the stage. They start a public relationship. It escalates and they get married, but Chad is still seeing Daniel, and it starts tearing him apart. He knows he's hurting Daniel by having this public relationship with Avril, so he breaks it off with Avril, exits stage right. Daniel stays in the band, and they continue their secret relationship, and that is the only reason there is currently a drummer in Nickelback. So my third theory is probably the most likely of all. It might be a bit of a stretch, but I think it's the real explanation, so stay with me now. So Brandon is in the band. He's loving it. Their first album goes gold in Canada, and he's getting a taste of the good life. A bit too much of a taste of the good life. As we all know, rock stars sometimes have a proclivity to use drugs. Brandon takes a bit too much, and he can't pay back what he owes to the Canadian mafia. They sell very good drugs, I don't blame them. So the mafia isn't having it, and they tell him that he's got 3 options. First, chop off one of his hands and give it to them. Not a great option if you're someone who drums for a living. Second, go into hiding where they'll never be able to find him. He'd probably have to leave Canada for this, and he's too much of a patriot to even consider that. And third, to sign away his royalties to them and work for them as an accountant to manage all of the money they'll be getting from his royalties. It's his only option. So he quits the band and pulls a Ben Affleck, doing criminal accounting for the bad guy. So anyway, guys, those are some of my theories. If you disagree with any of them, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts.